Okay, so propositions essentially focus on persuading the audience that something is good or is bad, right or wrong. It includes facts, values, policy, and it focuses on establishing that something is or isn't, or that it's true or untrue. So there's lots of different types. It's just like one side or the other, essentially. So maybe, for example, you're proposing that cell phones are good, or maybe that cell phones are bad. It's just picking a side. So the organizational patterns, there's a lot of different ways you could organize them, but it is a basis for how your speech will be presented, essentially, such as problem, cause, and effect. So maybe you would start out by talking about a problem, and then you would follow in by discussing how that problem was caused, and then the effect of that problem. So that way it's all smooth sailing and the audience members have a clear understanding of what you're talking about, and it just makes it easier to understand. So next we have fallacies. So fallacies are common errors in reasoning that will undermine the logic of your argument. Fallacies can either be illegitimate arguments or irrelevant points and are often identified because they lack evidence that support their claim. So these are a little bit tricky to use, but you really want to avoid common fallacies because they just show a lot of errors. So sometimes, like a couple common fallacies are like ad populum, which is an emotional appeal that speaks to positive or negative concepts rather than the real issue. So maybe the real issue is climate change, but the issue you're talking about in response to climate change is the president and the government. That would be an example of a fallacy and how should not be used. That's just one example. Another example is a false dilemma. So it implies that one of two outcomes is inevitable. Like it just cannot happen. So basically, these fallacies kind of make you sound less credible because when you're delivering a speech, you really want your audience to believe you. So you can use fallacies just by doing your research and making sure that it's still credible. If you do use a fallacy, make sure that you have sources so that your credibility isn't at stake because you use a fallacy. So research is super important because that's where you get your facts from. You can't write anything without research, especially a speech. You have to do research so you can teach others. So if I'm giving a speech on dogs, I have done my research on dogs, so I would know all about dogs, different breeds, how they function, what they do, because I can't educate the audience without doing my research. So research also stands for credibility. So when you're delivering a speech, everything that you've researched goes into what you are presenting. So you can find a lot of credible sources when you're doing your research by looking up academic articles and going to libraries and looking at textbooks and yeah. So that's it. Thanks.